Hi, I'm Nigel Griffiths. I work in Advanced Technical Support, Power Systems, IBM Europe. In this Director6 movie, we're going to look at one of the side effects of installing VMControl, as you get better performance monitoring at the KEC or the whole machine level, even if you don't go on to actually pay for it and the trial version times out. Okay, well I've just logged into Systems Director and I want to page down to the bottom here. And we can see that I have VMControl installed, and it was the evaluation license for 60 days and it's gone over that now, so it's expired. If you click on the purchase license here, you'll go to a standard IBM page for VMControl. It doesn't tell you how much it costs or how to pay for it. It just says contact your IBM local representative, which is less than helpful. Another thing is that VMControl comes in two parts really. The standard version does image management, so you can do this capturing a logical partition, and then it puts it into a repository, and then you can deploy that. So you can push this out. It just says which image do you want and which machine do you want it on, and it does everything else for you, which is a really good tool. The second part, the enterprise version, has this thing called system pools, where you can put a group of machines and all the logical partitions they're in into a system pool, and it will manage this system pool. So it will do things like live partition mobility to move a logical partition from a busy machine to a quieter one, or you can set up plans that say, I want to take all the logical partitions off this machine here because we want to do, I don't know, some update or maintenance to the machine. Now, to do that system pool operation, particularly the performance management, it has to have some detailed understanding about the power machines, power 5 or 6 or now power 7. To do that, it needs to be monitoring things like the entitlement and the physical CPU use. And so when you install VMControl, over here in Status and Health, there's a new panel here called Performance Summary. So let's go into there, and we can see here that I'm monitoring a particular machine. We'll pop the menu out of the way, and I want to go and monitor a machine and all the logical partitions. They're all called Diamond. The machine's called Diamond, all the logical partitions have Diamond in the name. And so here they are. This is the first movie I can sort of confess up that this is actually a Power 7 machine, and we've been using Director6 on Power 7 for 3.5 months before it was actually released. Now it says here that I got one of two lists here, so if we do select all, this will actually bring all the lists from all the pages, and I can just add them all in one go to my list here of my targets. I could have put all these logical partitions and resources, the VIO servers and things, into a group and just gone and found the group as an alternative way. Also notice up here that I'm using the virtual manager monitors. There's various things in this list that we could also be using. Now let's scroll down to the more interesting bit. Now these resources here, the diamond and the number, these look like the logical partition name as found on the HMC. Some of these though they came up and were discovered as the IBM and then the serial number of the machine and then the logical partition ID, and I went round to rename them to something that I could recognise. I've just put on roughly what's on each of these particular ones that I'm accessing at the moment. This is the default view. We can see that I know these are all AIX, so that apparently OS type 9 is AIX, although sometimes it recognises it, sometimes it doesn't. 27 is a VIO server. And we can immediately see that I have 8 CPUs on my machine, and these are the virtual processor numbers as I'm using shared CPUs. So particular applications have the NIM server has 4 CPUs, and this swing bench logical partition here has 2 virtual CPUs, and immediately we're having this utilization number here. Now it's important when you're looking at a utilization percentage, you have to know it's 100% of what. Is that the machine? Is that the CPUs assigned to here? Are they dedicated or shared? And what happens if we go over? Maybe it's related to entitlement. We can work that out if we go and look at select column monitors here. Now that OS type wasn't very helpful, so we can remove that. And we'll put in here available processors. We'll do the entitlement, that's good to track, and let's have a look at the CPU utilization units as opposed to percentage. There's a few other things in here. Let's also include the state and the description. We can click on the item here and then go up and down to move the columns around in which order we want to see it, but that will do for now. And it will refresh the screen with the new columns. Here we go. We see little dots here when it's going to collect the new information. We can see that some of my logical partitions have started and some have stopped, and the stopped explains why there's gaps in some of the numbers here. They're logical partitions I haven't started. You'll also note up here the description that it says up here KEK. This is the whole machine. So this thing here is actually the whole machine, my diamond machine, if you like. It's actually the IP address that the HMC has assigned to the service processor. And let's give us as a clue. These down here are the copies of ARX, the host names to get actually on the machines, and they're not supplying data. The things that are supplying data is coming via that service processor and the HMC. And I'll assume that Director is talking to the HMC that's actually getting the information from the service processor, because my Director6 server here is not on the same network and there's no connection between the two. It's a private network out of the back of the HMC. So I could, for example, click on here and do a rename. So rather than a strange IP address, I could just give it a nice big name. Okay, now I can see for my machine has 8 CPUs. It's 2% used. There's one CPU available. If I hover over here, it will show available processors. So I have a whole CPU that I haven't assigned to logical partitions. That's useful. I don't have to go to my HMC to look at it. I have my entitlements here. A lot of the logical partitions have 0.8 of a CPU. The VIO servers have 0.5 and 0.2. That's a bit low actually. I might want to go and fix that. Now this is fairly boring in here. We're below 4% and everything. So let me go over to a particular logical partition and start a well-known tool running called yes, outputting to /dev/null. This will lock up, keep a whole CPU 100% busy. And we should be able to work out which logical partition I did that on. Now the numbers on here get updated, I think it's roughly once a minute or so. Some of them come in a bit faster, but we'll have to wait a little while for the new busy CPU to be detected and the utilization to be reported. So this Diamond 3 logical partition is the one that I put the workload on. Let's make this column a bit bigger. Now that's interesting. So this utilization is relative to the entitlement here. We're entitled to 0.8 of a CPU. This is the how much CPU we're actually using here, one whole CPU just over, and so this is reporting 127%. So if it goes over, that means we've gone over our entitlement. That's not too bad a way of reporting it. If we get a well-known tool over here, this is the same logical partition, Diamond 3. We can see up here we're entitled to 0.8, so that matches up. And we can see the used CPU being reported up here, just a fraction over a whole CPU. Okay, I've just realised that this partition's named wrong, so I'll do a right click and do a rename. That's not the NIM server, that's the Director6 server. Now this is a more realistic look at the machine. I've got two logical partitions. This one is running 25% over its entitlement, and this one is using 4.5 times its entitlement. The problem with percentages is you can't add these up and find out how busy the machine is. They're all relative to the entitlement. Over here we have the CPU utilization units, and so here we can see that out of the 8 CPUs in the machines, we're currently running at 4.5 of them are busy. This guy is taking up 3.6 CPUs, this guy is taking up 1 CPU, and the other ones are barely ticking over. And we can see that overall our machine is 58% busy on average. So this is giving us a very good view of the whole machine, what it's up to, who's using the CPU power. We've also got some details about the memory and network up here. So we see the ... dots running. It's collecting that information for us now. And so we can see the amount of CPU in the machine at the server level, and where the memory is actually being used in the various logical partitions. And again, we have some extra columns we can select. I've tried looking at some of these in here. They don't seem to work with the power machines. Maybe they're numbers that are reported on other platforms. The available memory works quite nicely. Well, okay that. So this is saying we got 3.5 gigabytes of unused memory in the machine. I remember now the high performance guys were complaining that they didn't have enough memory, so I can give them another 3 gig and keep half a gig in reserve. I've checked these numbers up here against what's on the HMC, and that all seems to match up. Now let's look at what network stats we've got. We have error rates per second in here. Well, thankfully 0, that's good. We have these port 0 and port 1. These map onto the HEA or the IVE ports in the back of Power 6 and Power 7 machines, and there are some other statistics in here. Select column monitors. I don't find any of these particularly useful, but we can pick up perhaps bytes received and bytes transmitted. Have a look at those. I guess we can see that which logical partitions are connected to which port, and all I've ever seen in here is this great big number in here, which is in the region of, let's make this bigger, 9 million trillion bytes received per second, which clearly is not quite right. Again, these stats might be more useful on other platforms. But it's these processor stats that are the particularly useful ones. Give us an overview of what our machine's up to and how much spare capacity we've got. Now before we finish, I said this 0.2 of a CPU entitlement for a VO server felt a bit wrong and a bit low. So let's do a right click here. We'll go to System Configuration and edit the virtual server. Here it is, so we can increase that to 0.5 and we'll just click OK. We'll do that now, rather than scheduling it for some time in the future. We'll close this panel. And roughly a minute later, as soon as it updated the stats, it's picked up the new 0.5 here. No need to go over to the HMC to fiddle about and get that sorted out. Well, that's the end of our movie, looking at this pretty nifty feature of performance monitoring at the Keck or machine level. Don't forget, this is the website to go to if you want the high resolution version of this movie.